We are going to be starting our read today. We are going to be doing a masculine, feminine, and non-binary energy update this Wednesday. We are going to be starting with the headspace of masculine. Can I get three cards, please? And we'll be utilizing the Smith-Waite Centennial deck for the headspace of masculine right now. 3 cards to start. What do we have here? Bearing in mind, this is not based on gender, but what one feels most aligned to. We are starting our day off today with the 3 of Cups in its upright, the 10 of Cups in its upright, as well as the Page of Cups in its upright. That's a lot of cups. That's a lot of cups. Let's talk about it. Let's break it down. I want to describe, and I'm not surprised to see this many cups right now. Pisces new moon, eclipse energy. Pisces new moon, eclipse energy. It's working into the space of a lot of emotions. And I wanna stress this, it's nice to see the cups energy in their upright, because what we're effectively identifying, and I like to see these 3 cards together, is a continuation of what we identify and recognize in relationality to healthy manifestation goals. It's just a continuation of a healthy manifestation goal is one that's mutually shared. It's no harder than that. That's all I see with these cards. A healthy manifestation goal is one that is mutually shared, right? It's not just enough to articulate what the energetic dream is, but being able to put the work in to get there. And it allows for that recognition point as it relates to working into the context of harmony and serenity. And we want to talk a little bit about this too, because what we're effectively seeing here, and I want to describe this. We're seeing that for a lot of the masculine energy. And I want to stress this. This is for those who are working on their healing journey, right? It's the understanding and the recognition of what it feels to energetically find peace. And it's a continuation of understanding. And this is what we effectively identify, right? There's no happiness that exists for us on the side of any manifestation goal. The distortion point in believing that there's a manifestation goal that will change how you energetically feel, right? That in itself is false, right? There are things that make things easier. There are things that make things better, right? But the ability to identify the why, like why we effectively desire our manifestation goals, helps us get to the center of understanding our energetic purpose, right? And you often see this, right? Like, let's talk a little bit about the difference between amplifying joy versus ambition, right? What is the difference between amplifying joy and ambition? When one is working towards amplifying joy, you're basically working into a context of fruition, right? The space by which you find energetic harmony, and you're hoping to expand and expound upon it. However, when we're in the experience by which we're working through ambition, it's often working into the context by which we ourselves don't feel energetically satisfied, right? It's the space by which we feel like we're trying to prove something to the self. And that's always, and we have to understand, when we move as we're proving, we're always hungry, right? When we move in the way that we feel like we must prove, we're always hungry because it's a space by which there's always something more to prove, right? It's working through the lack mentality. But when we find our effective space by which we recognize and identify what feels nourishing, what feels energetically fortifying, and we start from there, right? Then we grow our energetic bliss, right? It's something that we effectively try to expand upon. And I like to see this type of energy right now in the headspace of masculine, because we see that for the masculine that is effectively doing this work, it's the observation of recognizing and identifying how to effectively reciprocate on manifestation goals, right? And that ability, like that adaptability, allows for the experience by which another feels, right, unified in terms of how they themselves are experiencing something. Now, I also see here, and I like this too, because, and I want to talk about this because this feels like a healthy Page of Cups. Sometimes we see the Page of Cups and it's not always in the best modality, or it's not always in the best experience. But when we see, if I have to see the Page of Cups in any experience like this is exactly what we want to see, right? Because this is what we talk about in relationality to bridge energy, right? What do we effectively identify and recognize here? It's the journey that says, right? That when we recognize a healthy manifestation goal, we can articulate why it's good, right? Like there's why it's good and why it's energetically good for others, right? It's just a good thing. The life-changing power of a good manifestation is a good idea is one that like it feels like it's reciprocated. It feels like it creates a lot of that energetic harmony. So we've got a lot of that energy that we effectively see there. And I want to describe this, this is important that we want to identify, like this is what we want to set our work towards, because it helps us understand that joy is arrived to within the self before it's found everywhere else, right? Now this is going to bring us to feminine energy, and we're going to be utilizing 3 cards for feminine right now. And the 3 cards we're going to be utilizing for feminine at this time are going to be the Tarot del Fuego. 3 cards, please. We've got here the 3 of Cups in its upright. Okay. So we've got double 3 of Cups right now. So that's good. Let's continue right now. What else do we have? We have the Judgment card in its reversal, as well as the World card in its reversal. So let's talk a little bit about the differences between what we identify specifically in relationality to that work that we see in the masculine space versus the feminine right now. Bearing in mind, this is not based on gender, but what one feels most aligned to. For feminine right now, what we're effectively identifying is I feel like there's a lot more work that we see that's happening in relationality to working into the context of identifying and recognizing healthy boundaries is what we keep on seeing. And one of the things that I want to describe, and this is what, and I need to just, and this is why we talk about, right? When we talk about, like, why do we see the disparities here? It's because when we recognize the trauma that we carry, it's understanding and identifying the work by which we have to heal often starts by being able to effectively remove the trauma that we effectively experienced at a time that we ourselves could not be in our authenticity. And I need to point this out, right? Because when I remember, the reason I think that to a certain extent, seeing the Page of Cups in the headspace of masculine is positive is because in the headspace, right, the Page of Cups becomes beautified, because the Page of Cups becomes the work that we do in inner child healing, right? You can't move into this experience if you're not prioritizing your wishes, right? But it's also the space by which we recognize that our wishes have to be blessed. And a blessed wish is one that can multiply, right? A blessed wish is one that can multiply. So when we recognize that our wishes can be blessed, then it allows the space of identifying and recognizing a healthy manifestation goal. So we've got a lot of that space by which we recognize that this is the energy of the masculine that understands why we have to work towards vulnerability. Because how do we recognize that our wishes are blessed unless we can energetically talk about them? And the space by which we can talk about what we wish for are our manifestations, right? By giving our wishes breath, they become manifestations, and others are able to share in them as well. So we see that there's a lot of that unified energy there, particularly and especially as it relates to the work of masculine, the healthy masculine energy that does the work to heal the vulnerable part of the self. And in the space by which they work to heal the vulnerable part of themselves, they're able to energetically express what their ideal is. And that ideal is effectively shared by those around them. For feminine, the hard part about this is working through the trauma that feminine carries around vulnerability. Do you see the difficulty here? Because masculine is learning how to be vulnerable. They're understanding that vulnerability is a gift. And once masculine is able to be in the space by which they honor the gift of vulnerability within themselves, they start to honor the vulnerability that they see in others. Because when the masculine hates their vulnerability, then they project that hatred of their vulnerability in relationality to whatever they see around them that's vulnerable, which is often creates the distortion point of masculine viewing feminine in the space by which they love and hate, right? Where do you get a love and hate mentality? That's usually a sign that you haven't done your shadow work properly. Because if there's a modality by which you see vulnerability in another, right, and you hate it, but you also desire it, it often talks about the relationship that you have with your own vulnerability because you're effectively casting the shadow projection onto someone that is outside of the self, which is why we see that the work that feminine is doing in terms of healing their vulnerability is much more complicated because feminine is basically healing from the vulnerability paradox. And what is the vulnerability paradox that feminine heals from? Feminine is healing from the vulnerability paradox, and 9 times out of the 10, feminine's wandering through an experience, and they're saying, "Be more vulnerable. Be more vulnerable. Why aren't you more in your feminine? Why aren't you more in your feminine? Why aren't too feminine? Too vulnerable. Wrong person you are vulnerable with. Now we get to hold you in contempt for having your vulnerability," right? The modality by which feminine often feels like they're on a balance beam in the space by which there's others, half the time energy is demanding that they're more vulnerable. The other half of the time, feminine's getting barrage for being too vulnerable. So we see that for a lot of the feminine energy, this is the feminine that identifies and articulates that balance, right? Balance, that's why I keep on hearing vulnerability is subjective, right? Vulnerability feminine is honored when others recognize that feminine's vulnerability is a choice and it's subjective. It's the modality by which the feminine is fortified as it relates to where they feel energetically vulnerable, because typically the modality of vulnerability is earned. It's not demanded. And when feminine sees energy that demands vulnerability, does that make feminine more inclined to be vulnerable? No. It doesn't. It often creates the space by which the feminine feels less inclined. So that's why I keep on seeing that for a lot of the feminine energy working into that context, right? Um, this is feminine that works into the space. And I keep on hearing healthy feminine energy is not prone as it relates to their vulnerability, right? Which is often understanding, and this is the feminine just kind of getting like this is why feminine has to heal from rejection, right? The modality by which another person says, you're not vulnerable enough, being like you're like that's not a negative. That's not a negative. That's a positive. Because that's the feminine that understands that their vulnerability is a gift, right? And when they work into that context, then they're able to identify and recognize why they energetically hold it as such. So we see that that's a lot of the energy that's working through that capacity. And even as they do so, it allows the context by which they're able to articulate their feelings better. So we see that that's a lot of the feminine that is working through the context via the healthy communication. This brings us to the non-binary energy. And for the non-binary energy right now, we're going to be utilizing I'm feeling inclined to use the Nouveau Tarot right now for the headspace of non-binary energy. Can I get 3 cards, please? Mhm. There we go. We've got here the 3. Oh my God. I can't. I can't today. You guys, are you seeing this? We've got it's the 3 of cups and it's reversed. Oh my gosh. Wow. Okay, if you're a tarot nerd, I'm sorry, if you're a tarot nerd, okay? If you're a tarot, if you're not a tarot nerd, and it's all in the same place. You understand. Hold on, like you have to understand this. It's you guys, it's the masculine energy. It's the 3 of cups and it's upright. Feminine energy. It's the 3 of cups and it's upright. Non-binary. It's the 3 of Cups in its reversal, but let's talk about it because it's a like, we're not I'm not surprised to see this here. It's a conversation in relationality to vulnerability, okay? 3 of Cups in its reversal, King of Pentacles in its upright, Ace of Pentacles in its upright. We've been seeing a lot of pentacle energy right now, particularly when we're reading into the non-binary space. So let's get into it. Like, let's dive down because what are we effectively drilling into right now? And I want to describe this, and this is why I'm not surprised to see this right now, because I want to identify that what we're basically seeing, particularly and especially as it relates. And do you see why this is often working into the context of what may feel energetically complicated? Because I need to stress this. Often when we're reading into the non-binary space, my interpretation and reading is we often see a combination of force of working through the modality of the space by which masculine is working and feminine. So you see the energetic complication that we're identifying that's arriving here, particularly and especially in relationality to how we hold vulnerability. And I keep on seeing, and the reason I keep on seeing that the 3 of Cups in its reversal, it's the articulation and the understanding that all vulnerability, right? All vulnerability is not alike, okay? And this is why I see that that is coming through here because, okay, and this is what we have to recognize. Good lessons have caveats, right? Every good lesson has an energetic caveat. So the modality by which we understand, right, our vulnerability is fortified by logic, okay? Why do we articulate? It is very important that vulnerability is fortified with logic because here's the thing. The ego is very sensitive. And so why do we see why do we see the difference here with the 3 of Cups? Because this is the energy of the non-binary working into the space of trying to articulate to another the difference between vulnerability and sensitivity. What is the difference between vulnerability and sensitivity? And this is why it's often difficult, okay? Because we have to be strong if we want to be vulnerable. And what do I mean by the fact that I articulate that we have to be strong if we want to be vulnerable? Because when you recognize that the ego is hypersensitive, right? The ego is hypersensitive in the space by which it doesn't want to see things. Okay? The ego is very sensitive in the space by which it does not want to see things. So when we recognize and identify the space of the ego that is very sensitive because it does not desire to see things, then we have the ability to determine the difference between egocentric sensitivity versus vulnerability. And often what happens and this is why it's so important that we heal our egos, because when we have a hypersensitive, egocentric perspective, we become afraid of vulnerability. We see vulnerability, the hypersensitive, egocentric perception sees vulnerability and is energetically terrified by it because you have to understand that the ego-centered hypersensitivity of the ego fears vulnerability. The whole ego is that when you recognize that the ego is the defense mechanism of the soul. When you recognize that the ego is the defense mechanism of the soul, and what does the ego say? Beyond everything else, even when it's doing something ridiculous, what's the ego doing? Protect, 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 right? And often what happens when someone's really ego driven? What is the first sign that somebody's really ego driven? They feel like they're in danger all the time. They might not communicate it, They might not say it to others. They might be trying to hide the fact that they're abjectly terrified all the time, but that's where it basically comes from, right? And then you have to build that, like, you have to build that fake wall, right? It's like it builds up too big. And what often triggers that wall? More vulnerability, right? Seeing another person that's in their energetic vulnerability. So this is, and this is why, and this is the thing about it. This is why we talk about, and that's why I keep on hearing, right? The caveat, not all vulnerable, it's not, make sure to be able to determine the difference between sensitivity and vulnerability, right? And how does one discern between sensitivity and vulnerability, right? Hypersensitivity is the space, and you can usually determine this in the space by which you recognize the hypersensitive ego does not want to see things, right? I don't want to look at that because it makes me feel weird. I know it makes me feel a bunch of things I'm not ready to feel. Like, right? Like, oh, I feel confused. It's a modality by which we understand the formation of the bruise, right? Whereas when we're vulnerable, we can explain upon it. We can expound upon it, right? We talk about it. And this is why we talk about the fact that the breath is blessed, because the breath is blessed, because when we get to the bottom of it, right? And this is why we talk about it. And I know it's a touchy subject, but it should be. Sensitivity is not all sensitivity is alike, because when you recognize that the hypersensitive ego is sensitive about everything, right? But true vulnerability requires work, right? It requires the ability to hold space or hold presence for it. Then our ability to effectively articulate upon it allows us to feel energetically fortified by it. And that's what's beautiful, right? And this is how you can usually check. Like, this is how you can usually check, right? And this is why it's good to talk about things. This is why we literally say it's good to talk about it. It's like literally good to talk about it, because if you feel sensitive about something, but you can't explain why you feel sensitive about it, ego check, ego check, ego check, because it's there it is, right? Like, there we have identified the culprit of the sensitivity, right? We've identified the culprit, and we all have that capacity. None of us None of us are free of that. We're supposed to have egos. Healthy ego is one that you can see through. You see that it's there, right? It's working into the context that it's very similar to the soul that exists within it. So, and I feel like that to a certain extent, that is why we see that is the energy that's potentially working through that, but in a slightly more complicated fashion, which is why we see that we've got all of the Three of Cups energy here, but in this modality, it's in its reversal. Let's continue into the heart space, and we're going to start first the heart space of masculine, we're going to be utilizing for the heart space of masculine right now the Tarot del Fuego. 3 cards, please. Boop. 5 of Wands, and it's upright. 2 more. Ooh, more cup energy. Queen of Cups energy, and it's upright. And 1 more, please. There it is. Come on. The Emperor in its reversal. Like to see this too. This is some good stuff here. Specifically and particularly, and I just want to show you this. This is good, right? The Page of Cups in its upright in the headspace with an Emperor in its reversal in the heart space. Like, I'm going to explain why this is important, particularly and especially because we've got this Queen of Wands energy here too. This is a continuation of what we identify is potentially occurring right now, which is a recognition point of understanding that how we feel about vulnerability is a really good temperature in relationality to how our inner child work is going, right? It's hard, right? How we feel about vulnerability tells us everything. It's a good thermometer, that's basically what these 3 cards say to me, right? If you need a good thermometer in terms of how your inner child how's that inner child healing going? What's the first thing that comes to your head when I say the word vulnerable, right? Is it the modality by which you feel protective? Is the space by which you feel the sense of wanting to protect something? Or is it the space by which you want to hurt it? How's that inner child healing going? How's that inner child healing going? How do you feel How do you feel when I say the word vulnerable? What's the first thing that pops into your head? That modality and that experience, right? And this is a continuation of what we articulated. And this is often why we understand that the steps that we take to heal our relationship begin with how well we've healed our inner child, right? Because the way others experience our relationship is often the projection of how well we've tended our inner child, right? When we see, like, if you're in a space by which you haven't healed your inner child and you hate vulnerability in yourself, then when you have a counterpart that's trying to open up to you and be vulnerable, right? What do you see there, right? You feel the capacity of working through what you identify as threat, right? It's literally the space, like the ego that's too expanded sees vulnerability and feels it as threat because it's the modality by we recognize or we feel the volatility of something that we work to quash within ourselves, right? And this is what often is at the heart of unhealthy relationship dynamics because when we heal the ability of understanding that vulnerability is the most precious gift, that the ability to maintain vulnerability is something that we work to prioritize and protect, then we see that quality and attribute in others and we celebrate it there, right? We energetically honor it. We honor our inner child and we honor the inner child that we see in others as they themselves are working towards that vulnerability. And what happens if we are not in a space by which we are honoring our vulnerability? Then we see vulnerability in others, and what happens? We get sensitive. We get sensitive. We don't like to see it. It bothers us. We can't explain why. We can't explain why. It just gets under our skin, just bothers us, right? We shirk away. So that modality of understanding and working through the capacity of understanding, doing that work, being able to do this, right? This is the energy that effectively, and this is the type of energy that we want to see as we move into Pisces new moon energy, right? Because it's working through the emotionality and specifically identifying and recognizing, right? And this is the energy of masculine that articulates, that says, when I honor the vulnerability within myself, I begin the healthy work of healing relationship because I see that in others. And instead of feeling volatile, I feel the modality or the capacity or the desire to energetically protect it, right? It's a space by which masculine understands that never are they embodying masculine more than when they act as energetic safeguard towards it. Now, this brings us back towards feminine energy again, bearing in mind this is not based on gender, but what one what one feels most aligned to. 3 cards for feminine, please, and we're going to be utilizing for feminine right now. What are we gonna be utilizing? The we're gonna be utilizing the Smith-Waite Centennial deck for the heart space of feminine. 3 cards, please. We've got 1, 2, and 1 more, please. 3. Mhm. We've got the World card in its reversal. We've got the Emperor card in its upright. Oh my gosh. And we have the Strength card in its upright. Wow, there's a it's that's really remarkable, but we're gonna talk about it too, because, and I wanna kinda stress this, one of the things that we're basically seeing here is, and we've basically, like, and I wanna describe this, okay? And I feel like this is walking through, like, the level or the capacity of the healing that we see that feminine is working through right now. And I wanna just describe this best as, and here's the thing with this, and I wanna describe, so I wanna show you what we've got here. We've got an Emperor card in its reversal in the heart space of masculine, but I actually think that that's a good thing because, again, what do we see that's on the top of it? We've got the Page of Cups. So that's good because this is the work that we do to honor the feelings, right? For feminine, it's honoring the feelings by being protective of them, is what I keep on seeing. for a lot of that energy, what we're basically identifying or defining there is working into, I keep on hearing, like, working into the context of, and this is just look, and I wanna just show you this, like, especially with the World card in its reversal, right? Right, this is the feminine working through, like, the World card in its reversal is being able to articulate upon the feelings, right? And this is what we keep on seeing, particularly and especially with a lot of the feminine energy that's working through this, right? Feelings feelings don't fix things, but articulating upon feelings shows us where the work needs to go, right? And that's what I keep on seeing. This is a lot of the feminine that is working into the context that says, as long as I'm being responsible with my feelings, right? This is the feminine that says, as long as those feelings have directions attached to them, right? As long as those feelings are logical and reasonable, right? And here's the thing about it. You will be the most logical, reasonable person on the planet with your feelings, and you will still face rejection. Why? Because unhealthy relationship hates healthy things in it. Unhealthy relationship hates healthy things in it. And this is why when we recognize what is healthy and we are bringing healthy things and we feel energetic rejection, we don't we don't get too stressed about it because we recognize that that's a blessing. It's a we're like, "Oh, good, a blessing. Oh, thank goodness. Look, I found a blessing today. Oh, this is lovely. Look at this lovely blessing I found where I brought, like, what an incredible day. I brought logic. I brought a strong emotion with a logical direction, and I experienced rejection, and I identified the source of the problem." It's like this is the energy that just effectively identifies and recognizes upon that, and working into that capacity, right? Being able to recognize and identify that, that's the energy saying that's a strong suit. That's a strong suit. That's a feminine being like, that's feminine's greatest asset, right? And feminine, like feminine's like, look at the logic on this one, right? It's like, look at the logic on this one. Because it allows the feminine to be able to understand that that is the feminine that has a healing presence. You want to embody a healing presence? Right? And I hate to break this to you. You want to embody a healing presence? You can't take a healing presence everywhere, right? You got to be energetically selective because there is no amount of healing that you can bring to a trauma space, right? If it's energetically confusing and you're bringing something healing there and it just gets more confusing, right? Let that be, like, that is your note, right? And that's the modality by which you move towards. And this is a feminine that says that the space by which this is what we talk about with the force of love, right? The modality by which we're energetically productive with it doesn't mean that we spin our gears in spaces by which it doesn't feel energetically valued. It's the modality by which we identify and recognize the force of intention by which we focus upon our energetic direction. So we see that for a lot of the energy effectively facilitating and doing that work, I feel like this, it's interesting because I feel like this is energy of the feminine that's not, like, that's not taking that as heavily, right? They're not taking it personally, they're taking it profoundly, right? Like, it's while continuing while continuing moving into non-binary space right now. 3 cards for non-binary, please. And we're gonna be utilizing for the heart space of non-binary, we're gonna be utilizing the Tarot del Fuego. 3 cards, please. Actually, yeah, Tarot del Fuego. Where'd they go? Thank you. 1, 2, and 3. We've got here the Strength card in its reversal, which is what we also see in the heart space of feminine. So there's a lot of interconnectedness that we're seeing in these cards right now. We've got the 9 of Cups in its upright, and we have the knave, the page of pentacles, in its reversal. So let's talk a little bit about what we're effectively seeing here, because, and I want to describe this. So, as I mentioned, a lot of pentacle energy, a lot of pentacle energy that we see that's occurring right now, particularly in the space of the non-binaries, heart, like generally. And this is working into, right? When we see a lot of pentacle, it's work. Pentacles are practical, right? Pentacles are practical. And I like to point this out. This is a lot of energy that's worked towards healing, very much in the space of being profoundly practical, right? And what is the gift of being profoundly practical? It's the space by which, and here's the thing, practicality is an absolute gift. When you are practical, you are pragmatic, right? When you are practical, you are pragmatic. And when you're pragmatic, right, you don't dwell on things, right? And I feel like this is the space by which, and I want to describe this. What I'm seeing right now in the non-binary space is like a drama-free, drama, drama-free, drama-free mentality is what I'm keep on getting. And why do we see a drama-free mentality, but absolute authenticity, which is what I keep on getting. Like drama-free, absolute authenticity, right? Because and this is what is often, and I keep on seeing they like it's a drama that they enjoy, but they don't employ, is what I keep on hearing. Drama is something to be enjoyed, not employed, right? So someone who has a taste for drama because it is something that they like to see, but not something that they like to embody. Okay. Like they're like, the drama stays there. I like to keep it there. That's where the drama is, not over here. No, no, no. There's a nice little space. No, no, drama stays there. I like to look at it. It's fine. Nope, 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 no. That's where it stays. Is what I keep on seeing. Like, that's where it stays. No, that's why there's a stage. I keep on hearing that's why there's a stage. Because when you recognize that, when you have a space of understanding, right? It's the recognition of working through, right? The space by which you work through. This is energy that the reason that they it's like they work very hard to be drama free, is what I keep on seeing. And so and that's what happens, right? When you're very pragmatic, right? When you're very practical and you're very pragmatic, you like, I see the energy going, I prefer my drama on the outside, not the inside. Like, I prefer my drama on the outside, not the inside, because it gets in the way, right? It gets in the way. It's a space by which we understand. And this is what I keep on seeing, and I need to stress this. I feel like, and this is what I mean in relationality to some of the healing that I see that this energy is doing. I feel like this energy has walked away from trauma experiences by which another person told them that they were dramatic, but what was really happening was tragic, right? The modality that by which this energy does not stick around for trauma, and trauma is drama. Trauma is drama when you think about it, right? Trauma is drama when you think about it, because it's the modality by which it's not doing what is energetically logical. So this is why I see this is energy has often felt those modalities or experiences that were profoundly painful, because these are relations. Like, I see the level of healing that this energy is doing is being in a modality by which, right in the midst of awful trauma, they made the choice to effectively move away from it. And what did another person articulate at the time that they were doing that? What did they say they were doing? Said they were being dramatic, right? Somebody being told that one was dramatic because one chose to leave a trauma-filled environment, right? And this is the energy that articulates, and I keep on seeing that this energy is very used to that. is what I keep on seeing, right? This is the energy that says, like, this is the energy that recognizes and identifies that space, right? I keep on seeing, be very wary who someone articulates is the source of drama, because you have to look at the energetic environment by which another person is articulating. The energy that moves away is often articulated as the dramatic one, because the energy does not like trauma. So I see that there's a lot of that energy there that's working through that. And even in the observation of it, it's heavy, right? It's heavy, but they know it all. They know it very, very well. They recognize and identify that that's just the case of it. Continuing to move towards back into the bottom of the deck. So we're going to be utilizing into the unconscious of masculine, bearing in mind this is not based on gender, but what one feels most aligned to. And we're going to be utilizing the Nouveau Tarot deck. 3 cards, please. We have here the Page of Swords in its upright, the Strength card, which we see in the feminine deck in the heart space, and the 9 of Wands in its reversal. So let's talk a little bit about what we're seeing there, specifically and particularly in relationality to, and I just want to just like, and I want to describe this because this is what we effectively see. Like, I feel like for a lot of the masculine energy right now that's doing this work, it feels like a maturation process, right? And I want to describe this, like just looking upon these cards, right? Look at the disparity between what we see in the heart space of masculine versus what we see in the head space, right? That Page of Cups versus that Page of Swords energy, right? So what we effectively identify, recognize is this is I want to describe this to a certain extent. This feels like masculine in a way, like putting like childish things away. And the reason I keep on seeing putting childish things away is coming out of the modality that energy around, nobody requires rescuing from anything, is what I keep on hearing, right? Like, this is what we effectively see in relationality to that Page of Wands with the Strength card, as well as the 9 of Wands in its reversal, right? And we have to describe this because this is often what we understand, right? The space by which we navigate or experience something, in the state by which we see another and feel like we need rescuing, there's nothing more unhealthy, right? Because when we believe that energy requires rescuing, then we're effectively accuting, right? And the accutation point is the space by which we articulate the feeling of not holding the sense of proportion as it relates to building into the context of healthy relationship. And this is what we understand. Like, we have to understand that this is a huge amount of trauma that masculine is working to release. Look at a lot of the atrocities. Look at a lot of the atrocities in this world. Most of the atrocities did not come from harm. Most of the atrocities came from a distorted ego looking at something perfectly fine and identifying that it needed to be rescued, right? Like, the modality by which we understand love is not about rescuing. It's about active listening, right? And when we remove that rescue mentality, right? When we understand how dangerous it is, because what happens? Your entitlement exists in the space by which you look at everything and you believe it needs to be rescued. Because when you look at things from a rescued mentality, you're already viewing something in the perception by which you feel that your perception is energetically correct, right? Active listening is the work that we do to understand and to energetically share. It's the modality by which we amplify the force of our care. And this is the modality by which I see that a lot of the energy works to heal. Because the first thing you have to do is get out of that rescue mentality, right? It's a childish thing. It's like it's a childish mentality, and the identification point that we effectively work to alleviate it, right? We understand that when we carry a childish mentality deeper into a mature experience, it becomes unhealthy. This is what we talk about in relationality to inner child healing, because we want to preserve the healthy inner child. And what does the healthy inner child do? The healthy inner child sees things from a place of wonder, from a space of love, from a space of amplification, from the space of possibility. And then that ego starts to form. And what does the ego start to say? Right? Look, I'm here to protect you, right? It's out there, it's rough out there. Protect, 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 protect. And sometimes you need to protect. There are bad things out there. But the overemphasis, right? The ego that starts to build and build and build and build and build, right? What is that? What does the ego start to do? The ego likes to try to convince us that it is a standard. And we recognize and fortify upon our ego getting too big by being able to articulate why something is in an energetic standard. And the modality by which we understand that our trauma loves to masquerade as our standards in disguise is often articulated in the space by which, instead of trying to understand something, we feel the need to energetically rescue upon it without listening clearly and intentionally in terms of what another person energetically needs. So we see that this is a lot of the journey of the masculine, recognizing and identifying and working to heal from that tendency, right? And as the masculine continues to do so, right? Love becomes active listening, right? It's the modality by which we work to understand so that we can build supportive systems for each other. And so I see even now, right? And I want to point this out, right? Even in the modality by which we recognize that the masculine is experiencing that, holding into, right? Like holding into that vulnerability, holding that inner child desire preciously, even as one works to heal it, right? Holding it preciously, even as one works to heal it, right? This is what we talk about when we speak about nurturing the wound, right? It's giving, it's working into something carefully, but understanding that that care is how we arrive into a deeper understanding of it. Now, this brings us to the feminine, and we're going to be utilizing for the feminine energy. At the bottom of we're going to be utilizing the the Nouveau Tarot again for the heart space of feminine. And where'd the cards go? Thank you. Bearing in mind, this is not based on gender, but what one feels most aligned to. 1, 2, 3. We've got here the Two of Pentacles in its reversal. We've got here the Two of Wands in its reversal. And we have, the World card in its reversal. And this is really important because we've got two world cards in their reversal around the feminine energy right now. And so what are we effectively identifying and seeing in relationality to the feminine working through the unconscious space? This is the feminine that is working, continuing to work into the identification of the difference between being energetically coveted versus cared for, right? This is why feminine, right? This is what we often see in the modality of understanding and recognizing the space by which we effectively work collaboratively, because it is the identification point in being able to be, right, energetically adaptable, but also, right, and I keep on getting this for a lot of the feminine energy, working into the space of trying to articulate to another how one feels, right? The modality or the experience by which one is working through something, but not just the space by which they're working through something, but the space by which they are actively communicating. So, the modality by which they're able to effectively identify and articulate upon their feelings, right? The work that they're effectively doing that often allows them the experience or the possibility of being able to expound upon something. But often, right? And this is often what happens with a lot of the feminine energy, feeling the frustration as it relates to their own proportionality of communication. And this is what I like about the feminine here, because we see that this is a feminine that is building into the space of understanding that healthy relationship does not require us to be mind readers, right? Even though the feminine is very good at potentially attenuating what others' needs are, the ability to effectively articulate upon them, to express them, gives us, and I keep on getting this, and this is what I like as well, for feminine energy, that modality or that capacity in being able to articulate and feel the energetic frustration as it relates to working through energetic blind spots, right? And this is what we effectively identify. And this is what I like about feminine energy. Feminine energy feminine energy is in the space by which they feel, right? Like they feel energetically supported when others show them things, right? The modality or the capacity by which another person is able to effectively articulate upon something, but not just the space by which they articulate it, but the space by which one is able to energetically express. And I keep on getting this here because for a lot of that energy of feminine, um, I keep on getting working through that capacity or working into that space. And I want to describe this. This is why feminine often builds into the context of feeling energetically distanced from their own energy because the modality by which they often feel that they're healing from the force of comparison, right? And this is why we talk about comparison being so unhealthy because comparison builds into the context that there is an ideal that one is energetically falling away from, right? And this is why when feminine becomes present of that, this is a feminine that starts to heal in a very large way because this is a feminine that says there is no comparison when we're working on our exquisite, right? The modality by which the energy has builds into healing, not in the space of feeling the comparison point, but the observation of trauma when another tries to energetically compare something that then allows the modality by which they themselves are able to feel stronger within the context of their own energetic reality. And I keep on getting that for a lot of the feminine doing that work, this has often come, and this is what's painful about it. A lot of the healing that we see the feminine is working through has come from. Much like the masculine, who often feels like they have to carry the weight and the burden of the masculine, that has chosen not to heal, right? Much of the weight of the feminine that often feels like they also are working through the unhealed feminine that is still holding oneself to a ridiculous standard, failing to recognize, right? Failing to recognize the space by which they're trying to energetically arrive to something that is not their energetic exquisite, right? So that's often a lot of the feminine that feels the weight of that because it's a force of compassion that they would like to extend, but often those modalities or experiences by which they themselves, I keep on hearing the compassion by which they've tried to extend that then becomes the space by which they feel they have to defend because The feminine energy that was still in the point of comparison didn't see the compassion that was being brought forth in another person trying to energetically help another, right? And this is what we see in relationality to generosity, right? A lot of the energy that's working to heal in that capacity, but it's the observation of the healing that allows one to feel energetically fortified in terms of what it is that one is trying to articulate or how one is trying to express their feelings about things. And so this is what I keep on seeing in relationality to those feelings, like a lot of the feminine doing that work, right? Like healthy feelings don't fix things, but expressing feelings help us discern, right? Where the feelings are energetically respected. This brings us to the non-binary energy. And for non-binary right now, unconscious, we're going to be utilizing the Smith-Waite Centennial deck. 3 cards, please. We have here the 9 of Swords in its upright, the Page of Wands in its reversal, and the 5 of Swords in its upright. So let's talk a little bit about what we're seeing here in relationality to the unconscious. Now, the thing I keep on seeing, there's a lot of that heavy energy. There's a lot of heaviness, and I want to describe this specifically and particularly as it relates to and I want to talk a little bit about what we're seeing here because it feels like a lot of work that we're identifying specifically in the space of the inner child healing that we're talking about, that we've been talking about, that we were seeing very heavily. Specifically, I mean, it's coming through across all of the frequencies right now. But I want to describe like the weight that we the weight that we see that is being navigated, particularly and especially for a lot of the energy of non-binary, is working into the pain, right? And what do I mean by the pain? Because what I just described, remember what I just described in relationality to circumstances that they've had to experience, by which they've experienced like trauma, and then they tried to move away from trauma, and another person then tried to articulate that they were the source of the drama, right? The modality by which frequently they know that they're moving in the direction that feels that it's the most healthy, but understanding that when one is in a trauma environment, the definition by which another sees you potentially moving away from it and another tries to articulate that then you like it becomes convenient that you are conveniently the source, that the trauma often identifies is the drama. I feel like that's a lot of the energy this is why that energy like works through a lot of hermit energy, right? Like remember when we read for this recently and we saw that hermit energy that was just existing in the heart space? This is why that hermit energy isn't going anywhere, right? Because that this is the energy that knows and recognizes that that was effectively the right thing to do. But this is why we talk about the space by which it's painful, right? Like healing breaks your heart sometimes because it's a modality by which you understand that you can't heal another, right? Those modalities or experiences, and this is why often I want to describe this. A lot of the non-binary energy is very connected to their Saturn lessons, right? Because this is the lesson that Saturn brings to us, which is the observation that often when you're doing what feels energetically best, but energy isn't in the space of maturing in the same rate that you are, right? They'll articulate that you are the source of distress, right? You're doing what is energetically best, and they will identify that you are the source of energetic distress. And the modality, and that's what's painful. I feel like this energy is very used to experiencing others' apologies, but it's a rate of time, right? It's the rate of time by which an apology comes towards you, right? That identifies the fact that it doesn't it's like I keep on hearing, it's cathartic, but it's almost like the energy that knew, right? It's like they wait for that apology because they know, like, it's like they knew it at the moment by which they made their they made that choice. And I feel like that's a lot of the energy that often works through experiences like that, and that's why I keep on seeing, like I keep on hearing with them, it's like a lot of that energy says, "Apologies are nice, present apologies are better." Is what I keep on hearing the energy say. And that's why I keep on hearing because again, apologies are nice because apologies are like it's like they're soothing, right? Like a later apology is nice, it's soothing, but it still hurts because it's the modality by which it just reaffirms, like it's a reaffirmation that feels that works into the space, like, but a present apology is even better, is what I keep on hearing because a present apology builds into the context of being able to effectively recognize and identify, right? Recognize and identify um, the energetic weight in relationality to how we like to the space of not feeling so energetically isolated, right? And so I feel like that's what a lot of that energy often feels like. It's working through that modality and capacity. And I keep on hearing this energy going, to so this is what we see that like a lot of the masculine energy is working through observation, and this is what we talk about. The healthiest relationship you've ever experienced will make you feel things that you've never felt before. So the modality or the experience, right? The modality and the experience of working through, like, I just keep on seeing, like, a lot of that energy that and I like this because I see the masculine saying, like, "When I heal myself, right, I don't look at I'm not lonely, I'm building into preparation," right? There's no you imagine the space by which you're never not in relationship, but the modality by which we're ever preparing for the ideal one, right, allows the modality of feeling the energetic capacity, and that requires us, right? And this is the funny thing about it, we try to prepare financially, right? We try to prepare aesthetically. What we need to be doing is preparing emotionally, right? This is why we say, like, get those emotions in check because as soon as that relationship comes, new emotions come online. Okay, all new, more emotions. Oh, look, oh, I don't know what all these buttons do. What are these buttons? I've never seen these before. It looks complicated. But that ability of recognizing and understanding that, like, that is what makes you think you know all the emotions you can feel? Wait till you enter a relationship, right? And so this is why we see no disassociating. Because if you spend your whole life disassociating and then you say, I'm ready for a relationship, and then that relationship shows up, and not only do you have the feelings that you were disassociating from, but all those new emotions that you didn't even know existed, right? That messes with it'll mess with your head, right? It messes with you. But when we're ready and we're taking that capability on, right? Then we understand that we nourish our emotions just like our bodies, just like our minds, right? Our feelings need to be strengthened too. And how do we get strong in feelings? By feeling them. While we move towards feminine energy, again, bearing in mind this is not based on gender, but what one feels most aligned to. 3 cards for bottom of the deck for feminine, and we're going to be utilizing the Tarot del Fuego Temperance card, right? We got that Temperance card and it's upright. I'm sorry. I'm like, I'm apologizing to feminine energy for 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 a Temperance card on the bottom of the deck. But that's the thing about it, right? Patience, right? Working into patience is not waiting, right? Patience is not waiting. We are very productive in our patience. And when we understand, right? When we understand that waiting and patience have never met each other ever, completely different things, right? That's why you'll often see somebody patient and be like, what do you mean? Who's waiting? Nobody's waiting for anything. We don't wait upon things. We're energetically patient when we're productive because it's the modality by which we're perpetually growing and building. And so I feel like there's a lot of that energy that I see is effectively working through that. And even as they're working through that, even it's not that they don't get frustrated, but it's the modality by which they don't allow their frustration to override their own energetic sense of purpose. So I feel like there's a lot of that energy that works through that. And even as they work through it, they identify and recognize how they're effectively, you know, like it's just like moving, it's like a lot of that kind of like moving on type of energy, and I feel like even in that space, it allows the context by which we ourselves are able to energetically articulate. Now moving into the non-binary space, bottom of the deck, we've got here the Ace of Cups. And so the Ace of Cups, and I wanna describe like, this is the thing, like the non-binary energy, and I feel like, you know, like you learn how to fill your own cup. But it's nice when you don't have to. So I keep it's nice. It's nice when you don't have to, right? Like, I literally see this energy. Like, I literally see this energy that, like, starts every day, right? Like, it's literally energy that starts every day, like, filling that energetic cup, but then also saying it's nice, right? It's nice when one doesn't have to. Right, it's nice when another energetically works into the capacity by which we ourselves energetically observe it. And so I feel like for a lot of that energy, it's working through, like, often working through those modalities by which they I feel like they often feel like they carry themselves in that point of solitude. But even in the space by which they carry themselves in that space of solitude, it's the understanding and the identification in relationality to effectively identifying and articulating upon, um, like, I feel like that is the energy that has worked through the space of saying, "You've gotta love yourself." Like, you've gotta love yourself on every step of the journey, and even more so in the modality that when it feels like others aren't, then you love yourself even more, right? Because that experience, like, that is what we talk about as it relates to building into the fact that love is never created nor destroyed, right? We carry it within us, and that modality or that capacity to be able to articulate upon that allows the space by which we're able to identify what feels like it's energetically profound. But I see that that's often like I feel like that's often the energy that even as they're doing so, it often can feel like a lot of that solitude that arises, but the energy that finds, like I keep on hearing, they find plenitude in the solitude because they understand and identify the fact that they're making loving choices. That is our daily collective read for today. I want to thank you guys so much for being here and experiencing it. Just a reminder, if you would like to book a private reading with me, it is a two-step process. You have to book the reading, you have to pay for the reading. Please make sure you do both if you'd like to have those readings. Please keep in mind also, please keep in mind, I will never, ever, 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 ever reach out to you for a private reading. I will never DM you. I will never PM you. I will never slide into your inbox and tell you that I have a very important message that only I can deliver. The only way you can book a reading with me is if you book one on my site. So I would encourage you to do it there. Also, a couple of updates before we move into personal readings today. First and foremost, I want to thank everyone who participated in our recent class on the World Card. Our next class is going to be held on Wednesday, February 18th at 6 p.m. PST, 9 p.m. Eastern. We will be continuing our studies into the tarot with a focus on the court cards in the Sword Suite. If you'd like to become a part of that tarot class program, All you need to do is head over to my Stack and become a paid subscriber. Your paid subscription to my Stack is your ticket of entry into our live classes each and every month. As a paid subscriber, you will not only have access to over 9 hours worth as a paid monthly subscriber, you'll have access to over 9 hours worth of material in the Tarot Church Library class archive. You'll also have access to a one-on-one chat with me and the other students to ask any questions that you may have in relation to anything we've learned and studied thus far. And if you become a founding member, not only will you receive a discount on the whole year's worth of classes, but you'll also receive access to over 20 hours worth of material in the Tarot Church Library class system, as well as a complimentary mentorship class with me, where I will meet with you to be able to assess where you are on your own personal tarot journey and give you the best insights in terms of how to utilize those classes to the best of your advantage moving towards your tarot goals going forward. One of the things I tried to do in these classes was make them accessible to the absolute novice tarot reader as well as the seasoned reader. There's definitely something there for everyone. Don't let your lack of experience or your robust experience prevent you from joining us in these classes. And even if you don't become a paid subscriber to my Stack, I would encourage you to follow me there to stay up to date on any new offerings or services. I also post my weekly newsletter there, which will let you know about my in-person events as well as my online live schedule and my mystic meditation articles. I just wrote one recently on this full moon that we navigated. I'm going to be releasing one shortly on the new moon. And you'll be able to learn more about a very special retreat that I'll be hosting this August that I would like to invite you to join me on. We will be traveling to Italy to study the tarot in the location by which the tarot was first documented to be discovered, sharpening our tarot skills while simultaneously understanding the culture by which the tarot was able to grow and thrive. Everyone who participates in that retreat will not only be receiving complimentary one-on-one classwork with me, but will also have the opportunity of receiving a complimentary mentorship class that comes along with that retreat package. You can sign up for that retreat over on from my Stack or by heading over to my tree that has links in it in my bio. And if you sign up this week, you'll be able to pre-register, which allows you a $200 discount to the retreat package. So if you'd like to secure that, please make sure you're doing so sooner rather than later. I also want to let you guys know that on top of my standard life path readings, I also offer mentorship classes. These are for any of my students seeking a more personalized educational experience with me. I take a very limited number of students for this reason, as those classes are focused on each individual's personal spiritual goals and journey work. Those classes can be purchased on an individual level or as a monthly class series, weekly or biweekly, as your schedule permits, so that you can stay more consistent on your personal journey. I'm also very happy to offer I'm also very happy to offer for dream interpretation packages, which can be purchased per dream or as a series. If you purchase a series, I would encourage you to start to keep a dream journal, as we will meet weekly or biweekly with that journal and utilize the tarot to understand the key themes and messages coming towards you in the dream space. I want to thank you guys so much for being here today and sharing in these messages, and we will do this again tomorrow. That is our daily collective read for today.